Hello, everyone. This is Kathy Mason from Mason Works Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone with my friend Jonathan Ellerby. Hey, Jonathan, how are you?
I'm fantastic, actually. Thank you for asking.
I'm so glad. Well, there many Christmases and New Years we've played together, but
Yeah,
this
we
year,
have.
yeah,
Oh, now I don't feel so good anymore, Kathy. You just reminded me of that wonderful gathering we shared together last. Oh, and now I'm
okay.
bummed out.
Oh,
I
stop
gotta go. I gotta go. I'm gonna call my therapist.
it. You are your therapist.
I am my therapist, it's true.
Well, okay, so for you guys that don't know about Jonathan Ellerby, you need to because he is a amazing spiritual teacher. He wrote this book, which is one of my favorites.
And this book, I just grabbed a book off the shelf. But that book's I like that book better. And
Well,
then there's a free book on my website, Spiritual Experience. And I've lost my mind because I'm not even doing that whole email capture thing. Kathy, you would just
oh,
you don't have to do anything. You can literally just go to my website and it just says, just send me the book.
okay, well, we'll talk about that later. But right now, I'd love to ask you a question about what you're seeing right now with all the changes
Yeah.
for consciousness. In a lot of ways, it's good. A lot of ways, it's tough. So I'd just love to get. Well, I'm hoping that our conversation is a path to healing for people that are struggling.
Yes. Oh, well, the first thing that I that comes to mind is probably one of the most not typical answers that I've heard. And I'm going to say it anyway,
Okay.
which is that what I try to remind people is that 2020 is an absolutely normal year. There is nothing new or interesting about 2020.
Really?
It is life as usual, except it is accelerated.
Right.
So this is an interesting starting point because what it means is all the things that we think are unique to 2020, uncertainty, upheaval, dramatic change, the unexpected, gaining relationships, gaining work, losing work, there's nothing new there. That's literally what happens all the time, everywhere. But the thing that's unique, unlike any other year, really, possibly in the history of the world, with the exception maybe of the Great World Wars, is that what we're all used to happening over an arc of, let's say, 5 years,
Oh,
and it's my sense it's something like 5 years, it's suddenly compressed into one.
right. Right.
So the political behavior, all this stuff happens. It's happened before. It'll happen again. But dang, it's just compressed. Viruses, health instability. We do have these things from the plague to SARS to the swine flu and Zika and so on. But wow, it's just crammed together and it's intense. Financial instability. I mean, we've done the Depression, we've done 2008, we've done tons of this stuff. So the thing that makes it unique is not the isolated events or what we're experiencing, it's the way we're experiencing them.
Right.
Now,
Right.
why would I say that as a starting point? Well, so what it points to is that if it's a time of acceleration, then that means it's a time of opportunity.
Right.
And many of the masters that I've talked to, and I mean like great spiritual teachers and my own mentors, what they've talked about is that in a time of acceleration, imagine 5 years compressed into one.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's going to sound hard for some people to hear, but that would mean the death rate would have to go up as well, right? So in 5 years, so many people die. If this year is going to be 5 years in one, then People who never thought they'd get divorced get divorced. People who never thought their business would fail, their business will fail. People who never thought they'd find a new relationship or a new business. It's just all happening.
Right.
And the intensity of it shows us two critical things, which is one, we have a choice as to whether we're going to get into the flow of this accelerated time and use it to our advantage, right? Kind of like stepping into a river with a fast current, and we're going to go with it. We're not going to fight it. We're not going to be drowned by it. We're going to say, I'm not in charge. The current is in charge, but I'm ready to surf it. Or, you know, we're going to cling to the past and the way it was. That's going to sink the ship. Right. So I was saying there's two things we can do. So one, we can jump in and we can go with the new flow. But the second thing, of course, and you know all the teachers you talk to say this, is it is also an exaggerated time to see ourselves more clearly.
Right. That's the hard part.
Well, that is the hard part, right? Because if you think of it again, just to use the analogy as a 5-year compression, I mean, we all have to learn hard lessons. We all have to look at our limits, but usually we get a little space. Usually we might have a therapist involved, or it happens a little bit at a time. But for a lot of us, it's just like bang, 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 one more lesson after another. And if you don't open your heart to learn, it just gets harder and harder.
Yes. And the opportunity is to see the projections.
Yeah.
Because if you get triggered, you project out this either fear, protect, whatever it is out there, but it's really about showing you something that's triggered in here.
Yeah.
And but you're it's almost like you're a third party watching yourself do it.
Well, if you're wise, you'll be like that. And now you're wise, so that's what you're doing. But a lot of people are getting caught up in all this stuff like it's true.
Right.
You know? And now I'm just bringing up wild stuff, and I'm sorry because it's I know you and I feel safe. But you know, it's kind of like the whole conspiracy stuff. You know, I'm not saying it's all wrong, and I'm not saying it's all right. You know, people are going to have to find their own answers within. But I think what it speaks to, like, why would all this blossom right now? Well, like you're saying, people have a choice, which is to look for the learning inside or to try to write new stories to explain outside. But that never works.
No.
It's never worked in the history of humanity. At best, the story we have of life is a working model that's going to change. It's mythical, it's metaphorical, and it's never totally real. Never. Even science knows that whatever it knows now, in 5 years, most of it will be in the trash. But you know, if you don't want to do the learning, or you think you're going to get an easy way out, then you'll look for blame.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, this has been fascinating. I lived in Italy in the 70s, late 70s, and at one point there was no government, I think for 6 months. And, you know, at first they're Italian, right? So at first it's like, oh, you know, so how are we going to survive? You know, this whole fear response. And then after a while, people still made bread. They made pasta, life went on, the banks were still open, didn't matter. But you don't know that until you've gone through a period like that it's not life-threatening, but everything seems to be life-threatening, or the media would have you feel. I have another story. I have a friend who goes and visits his aunt in New York. And he was just there at Thanksgiving, and she's 95 years old. So she isn't in a home. She gets to live in her own apartment with a helper, and he goes back and sees her. Well, on the TV, it says, you know, there's terrible traffic at all the airports, and, You have to get there right away. And he sent me pictures, and he's in LaGuardia, and no one is there. I mean, like, how are you supposed to believe this? They were just drumming up the anxiety.
Yes. Well, and so here's an interesting thing. So we find that there's so much confusion about what we can believe to be real,
Exactly.
right? And we find it on both extremes, from this is the worst thing ever to this there's nothing to worry about at all. Like, if we haven't learned anything by now, hopefully most people who are going to hear this remember that the truth is usually in the middle.
Right.
It's never in entirely one camp.
Mhm.
But I think there's something more important. And this is the perpetual life story. In fact, the polarization of everything, racial violence and protests in the country, COVID polarization, political polarization, it really points us towards what I think is the eternal spiritual lesson, which is that the world outside ourselves is built to be and will always be a place of tension and polarities. But the realization is thus not to choose a side, but to go in.
Right.
And find the place in yourself that has no sides, that has no need to defend itself or justify itself by being on one team or another. You're just a fan of the game. And whoever wins, the game continues. The game wins, you know?
Right.
So what I hope is that people will realize in 2020 that it's easy to get disturbed by all the confusion out there. It's easy to pick a side, but that's not really where the learning is. The learning is to remember that answers are never outside ourselves. Our answers are always inside. And to your point, the upside is that we are marinating in a global consciousness like never before.
Right.
So regardless of the details of the news items, we are thinking about other countries every day. We are thinking about other states every day. We are thinking about, right, the planet as a whole, the human species as a whole, day in and day out, whether it's good news or bad news. We are just being saturated with a global collective consciousness. That is powerful.
Yes.
But the balance, you said beautifully, is to realize that while awakening to our interconnection and ourselves as members of the family of life is itself a great power, we must also remember that life is not lived on that level. We get back to baking bread and bringing in the gardening stuff when the snow falls,
Right.
and being present to the life that is ours. And for that, we don't really need all that other stuff to be sorted out or clear or neat or predictable. In fact, when it's a mess, hopefully it reminds us to really be grateful and present with who we are and where we are.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So are you seeing people coming more to Althea Center? Jonathan right now is the spiritual director at the Althea Center, and I found your postcard. We'll show something else soon.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, I don't know what year this is from, but
that's from the very beginning. But it's
so,
a beautiful testament to what we aspire to, right?
Yeah,
To
right.
an engaged spirituality. So the Althea Center is in Denver, for people who don't know, and it's really like a learning community. In fact, someone was just on a group call with me yesterday saying that when they told someone that they are, quote, a member of Althea, the person's question was, oh, well, what is the tradition? And she said, well, there's no tradition. And they said, well, what's the dogma? She said, well, there's no dogma. And they're still like, well, what do you believe? And then she stopped and she said, I don't know if we believe any. So it's a center that's committed to supporting people on the spiritual journey. So the belief that we hold as a community or an organization is just very simple, which is that God or spirit is all. That's the main thing, that
Right.
you're willing to consider that life is sacred and that each one of us can enrich our experience of life and our feeling of wholeness if we investigate and engage the spiritual journey. Like, that's it. But if you're Sufi, Buddhist, humanist, atheist, shamanist, whatever ist or ism, it's welcome, you know, as long as there is respect for the dignity of life and each other, you're welcome. And so have we seen growth? Well, it's an interesting question because we're primarily a learning center with classes and workshops, and all that's pretty much been forbidden since March. So we went online immediately. March 13th, we were shut down. 15th, we were online. We've done a live online Sunday gathering, something like a service, every week. It's almost like an extended TED Talk, really. Every week since then. I am running small group classes and workshops, everything from paid classes to free, 2020, what does it mean, discussion groups.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, the response that I see is mixed. And I'm going to be really honest, in a way that, I don't know, some people find frustrating. What I will say is that there seem to be a larger number of people in the world, and an increasing number of people in the world, with a basic interest in spirituality, consciousness, waking up. However, do I see a dramatic change in the number of people that want to go deep? I don't. I got to be honest. I just don't. And I'm not saying I'm the expert who studied this carefully. I'm just saying, in my experience, a lot of us, and I don't say this with any judgment, a lot of people, we're oriented around getting by, feeling safe, being comfortable, and so while there is certainly a group of us out there that are just like, 2020, bring it on, let's tear apart our realities and create the new one.
Right.
I would say the group that's grown more significantly is the group that was just previously disinterested
Oh,
in
great.
spirituality. So that's probably a great thing, that
Wait,
more people.
Bridge. Then you're
Yeah.
a bridge to the next.
Yeah.
You're a trusted guide to the next level.
Yes. Well, for me personally, what's been fun is I get to be in both seats. So, as an example, in March, when we went under lockdown here in Colorado, I started a daily 12-minute teaching at 12 o'clock that I did until the end of June, every single day. And that, little touchstone, that touching base, that just remembering that you are a spiritual being having a human experience, that was very meaningful, I think, for a lot of people. So that was kind of like there are these things that appeal to a more general interest. But I've also had the pleasure and honor of doing some small group work throughout the year. I just finished a 10-month group and another shorter 5-week group, and I'm getting ready to start another 5-week group. And I got to tell you, for the people who do choose to show up, and I'm really saying that to anybody listening, if you choose to show up to something for your growth, it'll be good. It'll be intense.
Yeah.
If you come with willingness and an open heart, I'm finding that those people in that smaller camp of those willing to do the deep work, it's on fire these days. People are really having powerful experiences.
Yeah, perfect. Well, Zach, people are saying, commenting a little bit. Zach said, speaking the truth is always a good thing, gently. Live by example. The rest is taken care of. That's perfect.
Beautiful. Yes. You don't need to, So one of the things, and I don't know if we're going to get into this, Kathy, but there's a model that I've been sharing a lot, and it has to do with people understanding the connection between stress and safety.
Okay. Yeah.
And if it comes up, it comes up. But the thing that I love that Zach is highlighting for people is to find that balance between expanding your mind so you understand we are a part of a bigger world, we are all interconnected, but you don't have to be in control of everything.
Right.
And everything doesn't have to be the way you want. You know, as he says, the rest is taken care of. You know, go for your run. Choose what you put into your body and mind and heart wisely, and trust that life has been managing itself for billions of years. So you can relax. You're like a very, very low-level supervisor at best in the organization that is the universe. You ain't the CEO of your own life. People say that all the time, but it's not true.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so I have a question because you have, 20, 30 years of experience in studying the spiritual practices and spiritual knowledge. And this time has been spoken of for many cultures.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's been presented very fearfully, that the apocalypse, and rather than we're birthing a new species of human that is going to be telepathic and gonna get the oneness, the unifying principle idea a lot better than what the previous did. So how are you seeing any of that information that you have so much more than I do, so much more than most of the people that are on this call? So could you share a little bit how you're seeing that? Because you've studied the Indigenous, you've studied so many different paths. Could you speak on that?
Absolutely. You know, and I in some for some topics I tend to try to simplify things. So probably ask my wife and she'll tell you I can make complicated things really simple and really simple things complicated. Like, just choose what we're having for dinner, for God's sake. So I will say that there are at least two phases, you might say, of this prediction and prophecy. The first we'll just call the ancient. And it's just like you said, from the Hopis to the Lakota to Hinduism, to the New Thought world. In all, I mean, obviously in the Bible as well, there has almost always been a premonition, a prophecy, a discussion that there will be an end of days,
Right.
that there will be a changing of worlds. Now, the imagery that people use to depict that, we have to reflect on carefully. Because when we take the imagery of the past very literally, it can make this moment, as you said, sound very scary.
Mm-hmm.
However, I was joking with people, it doesn't sound very nice, but, at the time of the California wildfires, and you saw those pictures of San Francisco, I said to a few people, imagine being a seer of the past, whether it was Nostradamus or whether it was some shaman thousands of years ago. If you had just a glimpse of 2020, all right, if you saw one day in the month where San Francisco was blood red,
Right.
you would have woken up from that dream and you would have said, we're screwed. Right? You would have said that I've seen the time ahead. There's violence on the streets. There's leaders betraying their trust. There's misinformation everywhere. There's environmental collapse. You would have described like a week in 2020.
Right.
But we're here and we don't see it like this, right? We see it in the context of the whole. In fact, there's people sitting on a beach right now as you and I talk, 20 schmenti, they don't even care, right? There's no COVID where they are. They're sipping on a coconut. Nothing's changed.
Right.
So the point is, first of all, yes, there are prophecies around the world that line up. Age of Aquarius, Kali Yuga, Mayan end of the calendar. And what they all point us towards is the end of the world. Now, it is also true, though, that there was kind of I think, like a second phase of this that was much more recent. In fact, in the event that I'm hosting tomorrow, the Legends and Luminaries event at Althea, we have some of people who are called among the top 100 most influential teachers on the planet. Neil Donald Walsh, Alberto Villoldo, Gregg Braden, Byron Katie.
I'll show it in a second. I'll show it in a second. I
Yeah.
don't want to show it quite yet.
But what a lot of them have said as we prepare for this event is a lot of them have said to me, we've been talking about this for 30 years now. Right? Like back when the 60s ended, it wasn't just a revolution of social consciousness, but people were waking up to environmentalism, they were waking up to injustice, and they were all warning us then, whether it was Ralph Nader or Rachel Carlson. I don't know if you guys know those names, but people were saying we're going to run into the limits of our choices very soon.
Right.
So for the ancient ones and the not so ancient ones, there's no surprise in 2020. But here's the great news, which is that it is an apocalypse. And if you know the Latin root of the word, it just means it's a new vision. That's all. Now, the story was really graphic because I think that the old prophecies were trying to depict not the literal change, but the emotional change.
Oh.
Think about it that way. How many people this year emotionally have been through a fire, emotionally have been through a hell, emotionally have been through an undoing? How would you convey to someone in the future what they're going to go through if all you have is metaphor? You're going to say it's like the world is being ripped to shreds.
Right.
And I think emotionally that's been true for a lot of people. But the upside is that it doesn't mean there will be no more world. It just means that there's a paradigm shift. And the paradigm shift is what we've all been praying for.
Right.
To move from power over to power with, to move from masculine dominance to masculine feminine balance, to move from technology over nature to nature with technology. This revelation, this apocalypse, is actually what we need to preserve the species itself. There's no future for us without the chaos of this moment. And 2020 is, I think, kind of going to make sure we'll get there because it's accelerating how serious we take the change in consciousness.
Well, what's interesting is that it's unifying people by their values at an extreme rate. And we're seeing that being an activist is still fighting. It's fighting for, but when you're in your values and you're living your values, where you're in a resonance, that's a whole different expression.
Yes. You know what? There's this picture. I got my whiteboard here.
Okay.
There's this picture that I drew recently for people, which is that there's this arc of change. And if this is the belief line, and this is the old world, and I don't know if this is going to be backwards, and this is the new world, at a certain point, we realize, like you say, there has to be a value shift, a consciousness shift. But then, in terms of the subconscious roots of behavior,
Right.
they linger and they change slower, which means, you just pointed out something really interesting, which means that we have people today that are already understanding what the new consciousness should look like, but they're pursuing it with the old consciousness strategies. And what we're going to see in the more dramatic and more impactful circles and settings is the movement at both levels.
Perfect.
That not only will we stand for something different, but we will stand for it differently.
Perfect.
But as long as you have a I'm right and you're left, and I'm liberal and you're conservative, and I love people and you hate people, that's still just an argument of againstness. It doesn't further the movement. But with people like you and the people that you celebrate, we're going to move into this place where there is literally a departure from the old world. Now, just one other quick thing. Part of the tricky thing with that is that for the people that are here in the old consciousness and the old behavior, the people that are all the way up here, not only in the new consciousness, but also the new behavior, this is like totally different languages. They almost can't see each other.
Well, that's what people are talking about with third dimension and fifth dimension. They're talking about almost seeing two different worlds. And so sometimes I look at it and think of it, well, maybe they're different holograms because their worldview is so different. And that I'm finding that more and more people with the higher consciousness are finding each other because of the digital advantage of using systems. So Zach's been writing a whole bunch of stuff. We'll catch it in a second.
We have Zach and Zana. I don't know how we got two Z's, but they're both right on. I'm reading those comments. And it's just what you said, Kathy. But see, if I can just jump in.
Yeah, sure, please.
So if we want to go beyond the metaphysical into the mystical, meaning beyond the world in which we deconstruct the energetic patterns and pathways of creation and move into the unitive understanding of creation, not only can we see, as Zana said absolutely correctly, there are two different realities coexisting that dominate this country. What it also allows us to consider is that there are millions of realities. There are billions of realities. And yes, as we cluster and confirm our reality with others in kind, it can feel like there's only so many. But the one reality that contains it all has room for everything.
Right. That's its design.
It's
wanted to collect all these different points of views, and they're all divine. There's no real judgment about it. It's just seeing. It's almost like you're at a smorgasbord, and you get to select, and you don't even see it if everything's happening for you, even if you at first it shocks you. So it got your attention of the contrast. Then you have an opportunity to see what you want to do with it afterwards, whether it's going to be part of your creating your new world or not.
Right. You know, it reminds me, just the way you said it, reminds me of a phrase that people have been talking about this year, which is, life is not happening to you, it's happening for you.
For you, yeah.
But I like to say that there's really three movements in the spiritual development. First, we think life happens to us. And then we realize we're a spiritual being having a human experience. And then we realize we can learn from everything. So even the worst things are for us, but you can keep going. And you realize eventually that life is actually happening through you, right? Because if life equals, spirit, or life equals God, well, then not there. It's all in everything.
Right.
And then all we need to do every day, and I say all we need to do like it's that simple, is keep clearing, keep letting go, and listen. Find the stillness and the openness of heart and mind to listen to what is flowing through us, as us. And there's not a lot else we can really be concerned about.
Perfect. It's perfect. Yeah, although I do think that this whole COVID thing has triggered a lot of people. They've been sequestered more with their family than they ever have.
Yes.
And so the appreciation of what they have is at a different level. And so that totally makes sense. And I look forward to, I just want to bring this up, and I don't know how you would express it, but creativity. We, we're creating all of this.
Yeah.
So, I mean, never before have there been millions. I mean, Unify had over almost 2 million people meditate together at the same time.
Yeah.
I mean, who thought that up? I
Right.
mean, who was able to create that and make it real? So all of us are antenna and have the opportunity to bring down these downloads of these fantastic things, out of the box things, because I don't think there is a box anymore. And then who's got the guts or the wherewithal to do it, right? So how do you see creativity in all of this?
Whoa, you're. I mean, of course, I know you live and breathe this, so it shouldn't surprise me. But you nailed it. I think creativity is one of the most underrated divine qualities. Life is creative, period. I mean, it's called creation by most traditions. And the emphasis there, I think, for me, is not on the fact that a being created it, which I don't exactly experience, but that life is a creative process, right? Where a little sprig of grass can grow, it will grow in a sidewalk, moss on a building. People who've watched the David Attenborough life story, My Life on Earth, on Planet Earth, which I recommend everybody watch to the end. They show how you abandon a building, you abandon a city. He shows Chernobyl. Life will find a way, right?
Right.
Caribou walking through the old office hallways and foxes making dens in the old culverts. Life is fundamentally creative. And you look at the variety of species, you look at the vastness of our universe. It's all about creativity. And you look at the most endearing parts of being human, and they're creative too. Music, art,
Right.
human relationship, food. I mean, we can become as rational and intelligent as we like, but you develop state-of-the-art technology that in this phone puts to shame what they sent the people to the moon with, right? I mean, this thing that I can't remember the statistic, but the processing power of my phone is something like 20 times what all the computers had at the time they sent the rocket to the moon. But you know what we use this for? Right? We're on Instagram, and we're sharing recipes, we're listening to music, we're looking at digital art and people's bodies, and we are creative beings. We are creative beings. To align yourself with that is to be a part of the co-creative force we need for the future. I think you nailed it. Creativity is the name of the game. And yes, we're seeing a lot of people becoming creative this year, although it's important to recognize, and this is why I talk a lot about safety, the barrier for a lot of us, maybe, can I throw this up now?
Oh, sure.
The barrier for a lot of us is that we have a fundamental biological drive towards safety. And when stress occurs, right, stress aggravates the feeling of being unsafe.
Right.
And so the unconscious impulse is to mentally, emotionally, and physically try to make ourselves feel safe. So Physically, we go into control.
Uh,
Emotionally, we go into, I just got to make sure you can see it,
you can.
attachment.
That one's, I don't know if you can see that one because it's in the sun.
That one? Here, I'll move that one.
You can't. What is it?
I'll put it somewhere else.
Okay.
Here.
Okay.
And then we have judgment.
Oh.
So if you find yourself judging, controlling, or being attached, then you know that in that scenario, you're not operating from spirit, you're operating from self-preservation.
Okay.
The reason why I brought that up is that 2020, for all the good things we've been talking about, or positive things, or however you want to characterize it, we also have to be honest enough to say it's aggravated a lot of this for the world. And so we've seen in homes, in communities, in countries, more grabbing for judgment,
Right.
more grabbing for control, more demonstration of attachment to the way we want it to be.
Right.
And we just need to know that the flow of life is quite the opposite. It's curiosity, it's co-creation, and it's letting go. Beautiful. Every single day.
Beautiful. Okay, I have one question though.
Yeah.
What's your definition between judgment and discernment?
Very good. Whoops, can't even spell. Letting go. I wanted to make sure I put this up for anyone reading. Co-create, by the way, means we just know that at best we're like a quarter of the equation in life. And that's a tricky one, because I know we have to teach people to take 100% of the responsibility for their choices and their creations and their manifestations. But to think that you can create a world without the world being involved, it's kind of egocentric, right? As though your karma doesn't play a role, as though the climate doesn't play a role, as though the planet doesn't play a role, as though spirits and angels and God and the universe doesn't play a role. Like, believe me, I've tried to think myself rich. It doesn't work quite like that, right? Having said that, it brings us to the question of discernment. Like, okay, well then, how do I know when I should be attached, or how do I know what to co-create? I think for me, it's a subtler thing to describe, but discernment to me comes from listening. Discernment to me is more of a feeling of congruence, that we slow down into spirit, we slow down into spaciousness, and we allow ourselves to feel what is congruent, what arises. And absolutely, that will guide us to choose some things and not others. We don't have to, loving the world doesn't mean you're going to, well, it's not a nice expression, I'm sorry. You're going to eat shit and call it ice cream. Right? I'm sorry. But there's we're not trying to spiritualize away the fact that we have needs, we have preferences, but we do want to be intentional that our choices are not coming from reactivity or wounding or ego or a desire to feed a false sense of safety. We want our discernment to arise as a feeling of life flowing through us, not us trying to control life.
Right. Yeah, I whenever someone will talk about judgment, my first thing is, no, I want discernment, but discernment is just my paradigm viewpoint. Really, it's choice. I discern this is right. I want this. I don't want this. I mean, that's how I'm looking at it, but it can be used in so many different ways. And judgment is what got us into this. Trying to keep safe is what got us into this paradigm.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, you hit it. And changing the language, for people listening, oh, Kathy says she's discerning, but really she's judging. No. When you claim discernment over judgment, you're saying, I can choose what is for me. I can choose what is my next step. and it doesn't have to say anything about the rest of the world.
Right, right. Because the judgment is a protection, and it's a protection against, whereas the discernment is a personal choice. That's the way I'm using the words.
Yeah.
And you have to, that I think that's the gift of this time, is everything's slowed down enough for you to really be aware of your personal choices, your self-talk, all of the things in your life. I mean, I realized I closed my office down, I moved back home, and I'm here and I'm doing something, and I said something to myself like, God, that was so stupid. Why did you do that? And I sat up for a second and went, did I just say that to myself? Oh my God, no wonder I'm creating this stuff. But I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware. It was like all of a sudden there was a shift. Plus, it felt like showtime. It felt like, okay, COVID, this is the time that we needed to slowly turn the ship around, float a different way. So yeah, I don't know. I'm very optimistic about what's happening, and I'm really excited about people being brave enough to show up, to do the creative work, that have the knowledge or the enthusiasm or the life mission, whatever they chose before they became physical, to do this work right now, because we stood in line to get these bodies to be here.
We
Right.
still almost as long as people stood in line to vote or for a COVID test.
Okay, so Zach put discern dash mints are great for your breath.
I have a case of those here, Zach. Although I just finished a box of enlightenments.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to
and
put.
I drink Serenity. Sorry, Zach got me going on.
Zach, you met your match here.
Don't get me started.
But you would have met your match with him too. He's delightful. He's in Boulder.
Oh,
So
great.
he's a physicist. So what we could do now is segue to talk about the event that you have coming up. That's absolutely wonderful. And I was lucky to help with the last event you had with Gregg Braden.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about this. So let me show it. And I'm actually, he says wintergreen or peppermint. Okay, so let me tell you, I will be off and you will not hear me. So this is your time, okay?
And then are you coming back, or will I just...
Yes, I'll come back. I won't leave.
All right. Well, let me take a moment to tell you folks, there's still time. In a little more than 24 hours, that's tomorrow, Tuesday, December 10th at 6:30 p.m., the Althea Center of Denver is hosting a new approach to our annual fundraiser. Very briefly, you should know Althea is a nonprofit center. We've been around for 130 years. Every penny of your ticket price to this event goes to keep Althea going, to our work. Not only do we offer courses and classes and a place to host courses and classes and events and workshops that are really all about growth and evolution, healing, wholeness, social development, environmental development, but we also house and support directly and indirectly programs for the homeless, a great organization called Sisters of Color United for Education, and so on and so on. So the engine behind this event is something I'm very proud of, and I think it's a wonderful, wonderful way to invest your money. Having said that, what the event offers, in my mind, is something extraordinary. Now, we've all seen online seminars and events. What's really cool about this one is both who's coming and the format. So it's 2 hours. Now you can come early, 6:15. I'll be lighting the Hanukkah candles, and then we will have the virtuoso Gonzalo Tepa, a double bass player, legendary, award-winning recording artist, incredible talent. He will be with us and until 6:30. At 6:30, we are climbing into a rocket ship to the next dimension, and we will have a total of 10 talents, 9 featured, myself hosting and interviewing, and we will have 10 or 15 minutes with each of them. We have Gregg Braden, Joan Borisenko, Matthew Fox, who, if you don't know, is a legendary Catholic priest who was rejected from the church decades ago for teaching original blessing and refusing to teach original sin. He has gone on to do extraordinary work. You got to, any of these people you don't know, you check them out and you're going to say, how did I not know about this person? Alberto Villoldo brings us wisdom from the world of the indigenous people and shamanic tradition. Tammy Simon, the president and founder of Sounds True, is a genius of a person. And of course, she has heard almost every great talent today. Mirabai Starr, an incredible academic, Sufi teacher who has a wonderful book, Wild Mercy, really celebrated talent on the 100 Watkins Most Influential Spiritual Teachers this year. Stephen Mitchell is my favorite. A lot of people don't know this fellow, but they do. So the book Enlightened Heart, the best translation of the Tao Te Ching ever. So many of these great books of sacred mystical literature you love were translated or edited by him. He's going to be with us. And the legendary Byron Katie, author of the work, and of course, Conversations with God, like how can you say I've sold 500 million books, Neil Donald Walsh. They're all going to be there. And the cool thing is each conversation is just going to get right to the heart of what I think we all want to know most, which is what are some of the richest and most powerful lessons from 2020? And what are some of the most important and powerful practices to move into an awakened 2021? It's 2 hours. It's going to be like lightning. I'm crazy excited if you can't tell. And I think it would be ridiculous to miss this event. I will tell you in closing, I have talked to most of them already. And the things that you're going to hear tomorrow night, I think it's all you need to hear. I mean, it's already affected me just preparing for this. If you capture what's in those 2 hours and you just work on that over the next year, it changes everything. It's going to be very special. So maybe you'll join us and you'll just go to the altheacenter.org website. There's a big link to Legends and Luminaries. You can sign up today. And if you can't go and you know someone who might want to go, please let them know. I believe this will really affect people's lives positively. And it's certainly going to make a huge difference for the center and this charitable fundraiser that we are offering. So that's my spiel. And I just want to thank Kathy so much for letting me be a part of this, right? And talking about the event and what's going on in the world. It's a pleasure.
Well, this is an opportunity, honestly, for those of you that have been reading books for 10 years, 20 years, to really get a usable group of actions to take that will up-level your game right now. Because these people, Neil Donald Walsh and Byron Katie, they've been, and Joan, actually, all of them have been forerunners of and have been way showers. And so the insights that they had by their high connections with Source, Matthew Fox, is unbelievable. This is a lineup that is like a who's who of spiritual goodness. So what I'm hoping is that the Conscious Business Zone audience and my email list will really embrace this and do themselves, give themselves the gift of this knowledge, which again, I don't think you'll have to read 100 books.
No, I mean, I hate to promote something and sound so, like salesy, but it's true. Like I'm telling you, in 2 hours, it just sounds like a gimmick, but you're going to literally hear everything you need to hear.
That's right.
it's incredible. And you're right. These, I wrote down the word forerunners. I mean, I know people who've said, gosh, I haven't heard of some of these people, but then I looked at their backgrounds and I read about who they are and how long they've been doing this. One woman said to me, I don't even know why I'm reading this other crap. I got to start reading these people.
Well,
So we're talking decades, we're talking centuries of experience just in this
exactly.
group.
But a lot of it's deep. I mean, it's like
Oh, yeah.
if you read any of the books, including yours, and you read them again 2 years later, and then you read the stuff now after
Right.
you had this perspective where
Right.
people had death, an experience of a fear of death in March, and then they have chosen how they want to deal with it. Do they want
Yeah.
to exit or they want to stay?
Yeah.
And they want to see how to play at a higher level. This is a huge opportunity to get this guidance from these beings that have they got the connection.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I'm very excited. I'm thrilled to help you again, Jonathan. I
Thank
love
you.
what you do. I love you dearly. And I just think this is the time we all came here for.
Well, I love you too, and thank you for having me today.
Oh,
And we're grateful for you sending that
yeah,
message out to the world and all
yeah.
the good work you always do
Thank
with all
you.
the great teachers.
Uh-huh.
And hopefully we'll see you
Okay.
mask to
Well,
mask
well,
soon.
well, okay. So just question, Xana's asking, will this be available to purchase for later viewing? So apparently she's not available
You
tomorrow.
know, at this moment, no. Now that doesn't mean it can't happen. Um, but the
Thank
focus right now is getting people into the live event, building that energy. However, if you really can't make it, I'd say check back in like a week, or even a few days after, and then we'll see what came to be the decision around that. I know that sounds a little bit evasive, but the real power is in the live energy. So for those that can do it, we'd really like to just focus on that right now.
you. Okay.
But there'll be lots of types of follow-up. So just check in later and we'll see what we've got.
Great. Well, thank you. And thank you for all the work that you're doing, and love your guidance and your perspective. I think even your whiteboard really was it's a great help. I'm so visual. I really like it. So yeah, thank you. Thank you, dear. So I'll talk to you again soon. And thank you all for coming. And please share if you feel that this could help others. We really want to see how far and wide this influence could do to help Althea and Jonathan and all of us live the new earth that we're going to. Thank you, dear.
Thank you.
Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.